Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, let's get back to Iraq. It seems like almost every day there's not a whole lot of news. Every now and then you'll get little spurts of actually pretty great news if you are a person that's invested into the Iraqi Dinar. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Before we get started, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and you know I surely do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold or silver, go to our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you'll get a free half ounce of silver. For those of you who are unaware, we do have a Facebook group with the same name as the YouTube channel, Pimpy's Investment Chat. Come on over here and join us. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. If I don't answer them directly, there are a lot of knowledgeable people within the group. They'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Also, a reminder, we do have Pimpy's News Network. Over here, we do post videos that we can't post on YouTube. Recently, I announced that we're going to be doing something special for our subscribers over on this network. When I made the announcement of what we're going to do, I said if you were a subscriber that did $10 or more, you would then be eligible for this. But instead, I wanted to change it. All subscribers who are $5 or more, we would go through your names and randomly pick one. We'll do this once a month. Then on your behalf, what we'll do is we're going to go down to the casino. I thought this would be a lot of fun. We'll do a live show in which we'll put $100 into a slot machine. We'll pick a machine in which we could do spins at $2.50 each, which means there'll be about 40 turns at the machine. At the end of the 40 turns, whatever is left over will go to that subscriber. There might be times with $0, and there might be times when there's actually thousands. So if you like a chance to have your name drawn and the opportunity to possibly walk away with thousands of dollars, I'll do these shows live, so it allows everybody to join in on the fun. I think it's going to be very intense, but it will be a lot of fun. And I'll do it live on air. You guys can cheer on whoever it is that is selected and cross our fingers and hope that they walk away with thousands of dollars. It would just be our way of saying thank you. And the reason why I chose this method is just because I think it'd be a lot of fun and people would get a lot of joy out of watching the video and rooting for selected individuals. We'll do it once a month, which gives everybody at least a chance to win. In this first article here is a document. The Federal Oil announces that it will take over the management of the export of the crude from the Kurdistan region. You know, this article is just talking about how the Supreme Court made a decision against Kurdistan. Kurdistan had been drilling and selling the oil independently of Iraq. The Supreme Court said that's a no-no, it's unconstitutional, and that they were told that they have to turn over all their oil production, all of their reserves, all of the paperwork, all of the contracts that they had pertaining to the oil, turn it over to Baghdad. Then the judge told them that they would have to start an organization and they would have to choose a committee, some members from Kurdistan, some from over there in Baghdad, and together they would run this oil company from Kurdistan. Now, there was a lot of resentment in the beginning, and there still is some resentment, but it's not being aired out in the news as much as it was in the beginning. So I think that they're just willing to cooperate to do whatever it takes just to get something started. Because as of now, and according to this article, the committee has not been selected, and what was ordered by the Supreme Court has not been completed. Now, this is one of those articles that you like to look at and you go, okay, for people who are invested into the dinar, this is the type of thing that we want to see. So here, the IMF staff concludes staff visit to Iraq. So you have the International Monetary Fund coming out into the country, doing some type of evaluation. End of the mission press releases include statements of the IMF staff teams that convey preliminary findings after a visit to the country. The views expressed in the statement are those of the IMF staff and do not necessarily represent the views of the IMF executive board. So what did the IMF find? It said the economy is recovering well amid high oil prices, with real GDP projected to reach its pre-pandemic level this year. Not if they don't get a budget. If they don't get the government formed to pass this budget, we're already almost halfway through the year and they still have not formed a government. Therefore, the budget has not been passed thanks to the Supreme Court, who will not allow the interim government to do any real government business, and that includes passing the budget. And since the budget can't be passed, necessary expenditures that need to go out to help develop Iraq even more, especially like in the private sector, and to continue with other projects, those are all on hold until a government is formed and a new budget passed. To me, that's a huge obstacle in the way of Iraq having a much stronger GDP. Cushioning the impact of surging food prices on the most vulnerable is the most urgent priority. Using the current favorable oil market conditions to accelerate structural reforms and advance social economic priorities will be key to strengthen Iraq's medium-term economic resilience. That's all fine and dandy, but again, I just don't get this. Why it is that the interim government can't do everything necessary to keep Iraq moving forward. Now, we all know that the main person on the Supreme Court is an ally of the coordinating framework. This is probably why Al-Qademi and Sauder's people aren't seeing very many decisions going in their direction. This is a bad decision in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. This government should be able to do whatever is necessary to move forward until the new government is formed, and that includes putting forward a budget that the parliamentary can vote on. The IMF staff said that the economic recovery is well underway in 2021, buoyed by the resumption of activity, a more accommodative fiscal stance, and stimulus measures by the central bank. Real non-oil GDP rebounded by an estimated 20% and is poised to expand by around 5% this year. That's exactly what we want to see expand, the non-oil GDP. Remember, the budget relies way too much on oil revenue in order to pay for all the government expenditures. Oil output is projected to reach pre-pandemic levels and bring overall real GDP growth to 10%. That number keeps going up and up. It was 6.8, then it was like 8 point something, and now they're saying 10%. And right now, I just don't see it happening. If they manage to get any real GDP growth this year without a government or without a budget, it's going to be pretty amazing. It said the war in the Ukraine is affecting Iraq mainly through the global impact on commodity prices. In 2022, soaring oil revenues will more than offset the increased food and energy import bills. As a result, the physical and current account balances are projected to post double-digit surpluses in percent of GDP. That is awesome. Surplus means they are definitely under budget. Nonetheless, headline inflation is expected to climb to 6.9%, up from 6% last year, so almost a full point. Driven in part by higher food prices, which is adversely affecting the poor segment of the population. It's that way everywhere, and the sad part is the governments have the ability to do something about that. Cushioning the impact of surging food prices on the most vulnerable is thus the most urgent priority, with fiscal policy paralyzed by the absence of the 2022 budget, which limits current fiscal expenditures to last year's level. Strengthening spending efficiency, maintaining tight control over public hiring, and reprioritizing expenditures within the overall budget cap will be essential to enable boosting targeted cash transfers to the most vulnerable and containing the poverty impact on the rising cost of living. Now, having said that, remember, the Supreme Court is interfering. Somebody has to relay that message that that decision by the Supreme Court is going to disproportionately affect the poor. In an environment of high oil prices and against the backdrop of elevated global risk and uncertainty, the focus on macroeconomic policies needs to shift towards consolidating economic stability and strengthening Iraq's long-term economic resilience. In the short run, maintaining fiscal discipline and tapering the central bank's lending support to the real estate sector will help avoid adding to inflationary pressures. In addition, despite large reconstruction and other investment needs, now again, let me read that because it's important. In addition, despite large reconstruction and other investment needs, that's because they have to pass the budget in order for those to be met. Limited near-term absorptive capacity, physical vulnerability to oil price volatility, and the challenges of the global energy transition call for building buffers for the future by saving a portion of the oil revenues via a carefully designed sovereign wealth fund. It says the current favorable oil market conditions also provide an opportunity to accelerate structural reforms, a vestige in the authorities, the white papers, strengthening the quality of public services and creating a physical space for much needed investment and social safety net requires a civil service reform, reducing inefficiency, energy subsidies, diversifying physical revenues, and strengthening governance. Fixing the electricity sector would be crucial to reduce physical costs and enable private sector's productivity. Yeah, exactly. Remember, a big chunk of Iraq, they don't have electricity. So if you're going to have businesses come in and invest in Iraq, obviously they're going to need electricity in order to be productive. Improving the coverage and targeting of social assistance will help better protect the most vulnerable, enhancing governance in large state-owned banks, and completing their audits and restructuring will facilitate access to finance and job creation by the private sector. This is what I'm talking about. Iraq's like right on the verge of being where we want them to be. There's just always some type of obstacle in a way. And this time I think they're closer than ever before to strengthening their economies, reconstruction, and strengthening the dinar. Saleh determines the average revenues for 2022 and the expected reserves. Again, this is more good news, but the good news is built on what I would call not so good news. It says Saleh is the financial advisor to Al-Qademi, and he told the news it is not possible to pass any law by the government before the executive authority completes its constitutional entity according to the results of the elections. The recent federal decision cut off the way even for the House of Representatives itself in discussing any bill unless it is passed in accordance with the constitutional context and from a government that is produced by the election results. In other words, nothing's going to get accomplished until the government is formed. He pointed out that the caretaker government will work hard to support Iraq's food security through what is available to it of financial actions determined by the current financial management laws. This amended until the legislation of the federal government budget for the year of 2022 in accordance with the constitutional paths that do not conflict with the court's decision. In other words, they're going to have to just hold it together with spit, glue, and tape and do what they can to accommodate those in need for 2022 until the budget is passed. He added that the annual government spending in the budget constitutes nearly half of the gross domestic products. Let me repeat this because it's important to hear. The annual government spending in the general budget constitutes nearly half of the gross domestic product. So half of your GDP growth comes from a budget being passed. But you can't pass the budget until you get a government in there, which means that economic activity depends in the greatest way of the government spending. There you go. So the fact that they can't pass a budget because there's no government formed is seriously going to affect their GDP this year. And you can see why. It says the most important thing in total government spending is the investment part of the spending that drives the demand for productive market resources, specifically the labor market and human skills, which at the same time increases the growth of the national income through mechanisms called the economic accelerators. Down here you can say he indicates that average oil revenues for the year 2022 will increase by no less than 60% of the oil export revenues of 2021, which is phenomenal. So the revenue created by selling oil will increase 60% of last year's overall revenue generated, which means there will be a large financial reserve available to the state at the end of the year that may exceed $40 billion in the event the current fiscal year ends without enacting a budget law and restricting it. So if they can't get a budget passed this year, they're going to have a surplus of $40 billion. Again, that's a great thing. But at the same time, it's built on something negative, and that is they can't get this dang budget passed. The Al Rashid Bank announces the removal of its name from the list of international sanctions of the Charter of the United Nations, which is good. This means the Al Rashid Bank now has the ability to do business, real business, including international, because there's no sanctions there. This is going to help Iraq grow even more. I think the Al Rashid Bank has something like 300 branches all across Iraq, and they're like the second largest bank there. So congrats to Al Rashid Bank. So you can see right here already Iraq is having the first quarter 2022 It has a financial surplus of more than 11.4 trillion dinars. That's because the budget hasn't been passed and there's no expending. So it looks good on paper, but the truth of the matter is it's not good because a budget has to be passed. So the Central Bank of Iraq increases its capital to 5 trillion dinars, which is good as well because most central banks have to increase their capital whenever it's expected that there's going to be a large outflow of money. So the banks must be preparing to do reconstruction, lending out money, and that they need the capital necessary in the central bank to support the local banks in their growth. This article right here, I'm digging into a little more. It says Sauder Alliance, an opportunity for Iraq, the U.S., and the region. There's a lot more to it than what we're seeing right here in the article, so I'll dig into it and then follow up with a video because it does cover a lot of information that we need to know about. So for now, that is it, my friends. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. And I'll catch you later. I'm out.